to the Crispy Ear podcast. My name is Ellie Kerr, founding director of Merseyside Women of the Year, and here we are today speaking to the lovely and wonderful Emily McChrystal.
Hi.
Hiya, Emily. Oh, thank you very much for coming along and joining us today.
Oh no, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, good, good. Could you tell us a little bit about, obviously you were one of our winners, so could you tell us a little bit about MWOTY and how that's been for you since you won? Because it is a bit of a bonkers day, isn't it?
Oh my God, it was crazy. Like, that is probably the fanciest awards I've ever been to. It was amazing. And it felt really special. You know, the whole thing was a real celebration. I think sometimes when there's like community awards or, you know, you're awarded for something very grassroots or, just community level work, everyone is like scrimping and, you know, it's a certificate and it's something little and it's lovely and that's enough of a recognition anyway. But I think MWOTY, you could see the investment that people had put into it and you could see how much the sponsors cared and matched the values of the awards. So the whole day was just amazing. And like when I first heard about the fact that I was nominated, even just being nominated, I was like, oh my God.
The conversation that we had when I rang in and you were like, really?
Literally.
Really? I was like, yeah.
It was just, honestly, it was amazing. So for me, even just being nominated was enough of recognition for me to, you know, validate what I've been doing and the work that I've been doing. So to win was completely blindsided. I did not expect to win at all. And mainly because of the quality of everyone else who was nominated and shortlisted. I was like, oh, you know, that imposter syndrome of you know, have I done enough? Do I belong here? But immediately that thinking and that thought process was just erased as soon as I walked through the door, and everyone was just so lovely and so welcoming.
Because that Monday night is the level it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think, definitely for us, we then get to see, you get to see us and we get to see you. So then sort of like, you know, I think any of the imposter syndrome, if that's what, you know, you say, because there's definitely nothing impostery about you.
Thanks.
Definitely not. But I think sort of that should I be here kind of thing.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's what the Monday night's all about, really.
Definitely, literally. And as you said, it was just like a level field. Everyone was just lovely. No matter whether they've been, you know, doing the work that they've been doing for 20 years or 5 years, it didn't matter. You know, everyone was just talking about the work that they do and the things that they're passionate about. So then when I won, I hadn't organised a speech or anything because I genuinely didn't think I'd win. So I got up there and was like, thanks so much, really grateful. And then obviously you get off the stage and you think, oh, I wish I had to thank that person or, you know, said that. But it was honestly, it was amazing. And that whole journey of from when I was nominated to now has been incredible. Like, there's been so many lovely opportunities, and obviously we've all stayed in touch and we've stayed connected.
Yeah,
we've got
WhatsApp group is insane, isn't it?
It's amazing. And it's lovely as well because it's not just a group where we talk about, you know, I've got this project, is there anyone who can help, which is great, and having that network is amazing. But it's also just, you know, I'm having a hard day, can anyone talk? Or I've got this update on my family, is anyone sharing that experience? Because I think, you know, as leaders and as people who are working within different communities that ultimately help other people, it's so easy to forget about what you need and build your own network and community. And I think often when I hear the word network or networking, I'm like, oh God, like I can't do it. It feels too forced.
It does have a bit of a forced connotation.
Definitely. But then I think if I change that language as, well, we're community building, we're building a community around ourselves, and you're making friends with people that you can all benefit each other. I think that calms my nerves a little bit when I think about, you know, networking and making kind of connections with people.
Because I think sometimes it does have that that thing of sort of like tackiness or sort of like, you know, a big expectation, whereas really, you know, for me, it's always been about relationship building. And I don't think that you can underestimate the depth of what those relationships bring. I mean,
absolutely.
You know, we did the conference the other week, didn't we? And I have to say, you know, and that's why I always say your network is your net worth. And I stood on that stage and I was a billionaire. Honestly, and so I used to say I was a millionaire, but I was a billionaire because, you know, that network that brought everybody together in such a short time that supported it. And obviously you were on the panel, on the leadership panel. Honestly, I was totally overwhelmed. It was a bit like a whirlwind, but you were absolutely brilliant, absolutely fabulous. But I'd just like to speak about a little bit about what it is you do, because I don't think many people will know about Comics Youth and also about Restless Development, where you are now. So could you give us a little bit about you?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll give the overarching picture and then we'll go into the details of the full journey.
We love an overarch.
Yes. But ultimately I work in charities. So a lot of the work that I do is supporting young people. So that whole journey started when I was 17. So when I was 17, one of my best friends died by suicide. And we were all in college and he was a young gay lad. And the more that we thought about his death, the more that we were like, this isn't just isolated. This isn't just, one person who was depressed and, kind of felt alone. This is a whole epidemic of young men, not being able to talk about their mental health or, explore avenues of support. Yeah. And then adding that layer of also being a gay person on top of that. There was a lot of factors that led into his death ultimately. So me and our friends who were all affected by his death went to our college counsellors and we were like, look, we want to do something because we feel like you can't just disappear and no one talk about it again. Like this is an opportunity for us to open a conversation that hasn't been opened before, particularly within our college. And the response that we got was, well, we're not sure if that's going to go well. We think it's going to upset people. And it's like, well, yeah, because it is upsetting,
it is,
ultimately.
And we're all upset.
Exactly. But we want to turn that upset into something that's productive and something that can help other people and prevent other deaths. But we got like a hard no, that's not something we can do. Even when we asked for a memorial bench, it was a no. Oh. Because that would raise questions and, it would start conversations that maybe ultimately they were not equipped to have, really. So from their safeguarding perspective, they were probably thinking, well, we're not even trained or able to have this discussion.
So let's leave that can and
exactly.
leave the lid on it because we don't want those worms coming out because we won't know what to do with
exactly because if they were like, well, what if someone comes to us and opens up, what are we going to do? We don't have the resources or the time or whatever. So then me and that group of friends got together and said, we'll just do it ourselves. If no one else wants to do it, we'll just do it ourselves. So we ended up setting up our own foundation called the Lee Cooper Foundation. And it's still running today. So one of our friends who co-founded it, Lily Spenlove, she is still running it. And the premise of that foundation was to support young people with their mental health. So we started on the basis of kind of using the experiences that we've went through ourselves of grief, and we've done a lot of training around suicide prevention, and all of this was through different community hubs in Knowsley. And now they've got their own hub and their own space that they run, which is amazing. They still do support groups for young people. We went into schools and colleges and done talks and support sessions. And all of this was just through the anger of being young and feeling like we weren't valued or listened to, and feeling like we weren't taken seriously as well. When we asked, can we do an assembly which is just kind of remembering Lee and remembering his story, even that was a no. So I think there was a lot of almost tiptoeing around issues that we felt we can't tiptoe around them anymore. So that was the first thing that we did, and we got support from a lovely person called Jackie in Knowsley Council, and she was the first proper mentor that I'd ever had in my journey, because she didn't see us as young and naive. She saw us as young people who were passionate about what we were talking about. We had lived experience in it and we were ready to learn. We took any training she threw at us, any support, any interrogating questions that she was like, well, what if someone says this, what are you going to do? It was really amazing. So she supported us right from the beginning. Even small hurdles, we couldn't set up a proper bank account for the foundation because we were 17. No banks would, all the banks were like, what, you're not even 18, you can't set this up. And she helped us with all of the logistics of that. So that was the first thing that kind of got me into the charity sector, really, which is a bit of a big leap into the sector. So that was the first thing that we did. And while I was working or volunteering with the Lee Cooper Foundation, I met my boss, my future boss from Comics Youth. So that's Rhiannon Griffiths, and she is fabulous, still one of the closest people in my life. She's amazing. And she saw what we were doing at the Lee Cooper Foundation and said, look, do you want to do a partner bid? And basically, do we want to partner as two organisations and ask for money for a joint project? Because I think that they were a more established organisation. So they were as a charity, Comics Youth has been set up from 2015. They had their own funding avenues, and we had no funding Like literally, we were just running this off our own time and asking for donations and, you know, kind of sweet talking other community organisations to use the space for free. So this was like a really big kind of olive branch for us that we were like, we have to take, you know, we have to partner with them.
There's power in that collaboration, because I know a couple of the previous MWOTY winners, they've come together to deliver, and there's such a power in that coming together of resources and also that collective stance of being like, you know, as one.
Exactly. And you learn so much when you do things collaboratively as well. So like we were, you know, kind of taking the angle of mental health, suicide prevention, and Comics Youth as an organisation uses comics and zines and creativity to navigate those complex conversations in a way that's less abrasive of saying, let's sit down and talk. So we ended up partnering with Comics Youth, and then through that, Rhiannon kind of, you know, we built a rapport, and she said, look, if you're looking for a job that's paid, then we've got this job that we think you'd be great for. It's only 2 days a week, but, you know, if you want it, it's there. And I was like, oh my God, that's so exciting. So I interviewed for it, was absolutely bumbling through the interview. First interview for a proper job that I'd ever had. Before this, I worked in a milkshake shop. So it was like,
so
you know.
that's a bit of a difference.
Yeah, day and night, literally. So yeah, done the interview, got the job. And that job that I was doing for 2 days a week was a development officer. So it was basically looking at the programmes that Comics Youth had and kind of interrogating them and thinking, how can we develop this to be more inclusive, or to be, you know, kind of a different angle that young people actually want and are asking for. And also kind of making those connections with funders to say, you know, this is who we are as an organisation. Do you want to invest in us? You know, is this writing bids and everything else? So literally from 17 to 18, it was just that full learning curve of learning everything I could. Literally, like, Rhiannon, again, is an incredible mentor, and any job that she could throw at me, she did. Because it was like, you know, ultimately she could see that I was passionate.
And also, sometimes I've found over my many years, which is many more years than you, sometimes when you're in the deep end, you either sink or you have to swim. And that's the best learn. And if you fail, you fail. But that's the best learning curve, and you obviously did.
Yeah, literally.
You know, you absolutely swum.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I wouldn't have been able to do that swimming without the lifeboats around me, knowing that if I did kind of tumble, or, you know, if I wasn't sure about something, I had mentors around me, that, you know, people who've been in the sector for years, that could say, well, you didn't get this bid accepted, but here's why, and here's how you can change it for next time. And
but they also saw something in you, Emily.
Yeah.
And I've got this thing, and I call it. And you see people, you know when somebody's got it, and you know when people haven't got it. And you they've seen in you that, you know, and it's probably not a technical term.
We'll coin it.
It is the technical term now. But they've probably seen in you that, you know, that you'll just take the challenge and do it.
Exactly. And that's things that I'd never seen in myself before. You know, it's things that people seen in me that at that age I'd never even considered I'd be able to do, because I'd never really had the chance to. I was just angry and frustrated and wanted to change systems. But then to have that outlet of, you know, organisations and charity where I thought, well, actually I can make a difference, and, you know, I can support people. And I ended up doing that job with Comics Youth, so 17 to 18. And then I went to uni for a month and dropped out. Because I was like, that is not for me. I know when to stop.
That, a month. Honestly, I thought it was, I went to uni for a year. No, a month. And I absolutely knew.
Literally.
Not for me. Wow.
And it was mainly because I picked my degree. I was doing English literature and language, and I just picked it because I was good at it. I was like, well, I know how to write, I know how to study language, and I just wasn't passionate about it. And I think because I had the work that I was passionate about, and I knew what passion felt like, I was like, I don't want this for myself. So I was brave and I quit. And then once I dropped out of uni, Rhiannon said to me, well, just go full time. So she offered me a full-time job, which is amazing. Again, just having that support network of an organisation that you know. And I knew anything I asked, she would answer and she would help. So I ended up working at Comics Youth for 5 years, from 17. And I ended up, within those 5 years, working my way up to be a director in Comics Youth, which was incredible. like the opportunities that I got from that job are just unmatched. You know, like I had the opportunity to design my own programs and my own sessions. I had that mix of doing that kind of directorial work and that strategy building and thinking of the theory of change of the organisation and all that big thinking, to then still being able to work with young people directly and being able to have that, you know, that fire that fuels me. So that was a really amazing opportunity. So as I said, was there for 5 years. And then I was working, so while I was working in Comics Youth, I was also doing different consultancy jobs, just the odd job that someone had asked me to do, and I'd be like, yeah, I'll give it a go. So a few of the side projects that I'd done is I was a consultant for the National Lottery Community Fund. So I was on their England board, essentially. So their governance network, where me as a young person and a few other young people joined that board to say, you know, I think you should fund this project, or you could do your governance this way, or, you know, more inclusive. So it was a very like EDI kind of perspective in that job. And then also alongside that, I then joined a steering group for a programme within Restless Development, who I now work for. So that was a steering group of young people for a project called the Young Game Changers Fund, which is still going now. So that's a fund set up by young people for young people. So it's funding from the I Will Foundation and the Co-op. And it's to support young people who want to do anything within community. So anything that they see as social change or social justice, they fund it. So I was on the steering group that went through all of the applications that came through for the grants. And I had the real honour of being able to work with the other steering group to say, you know, I think we should fund this programme. I think this feels like it's needed. And that was a really amazing experience. Like that whole process was just incredible. A lot of pressure and you know, like a real honour to be able to make those decisions,
but also for younger people's voices to be heard,
exactly,
and also to have that input and opinion,
exactly, and authentically as well. You know, it's not young people make the decision, then it goes to a board or another board and then they get knocked down. It's whatever decision was made by us as the steering group, that was what went ahead, and that, you know, that was what was set up. And we even set up like the funding criteria, the application forms, everything. So that's kind of how I met Restless Development, and I thought these are really interesting because they're not locally based, are they? No. So Restless Development is a global agency, so we're a charity, but it's global. So we've got hubs all across the world, and I work in the UK hub. So with Restless Development, I now work as a youth power coordinator. So that's working with young people again from all across the UK, working on a project called Walking the Talk. So that programme, we're advocating with government, policymakers, influential people to advocate for feminist funding and feminist policies. So when we say feminist, that just means looking at it through a gender lens. So, you know, making sure that anyone, no matter their gender, has the rights to healthcare, has the rights to funding, you know, the support that they need. So
is that word feminist can sometimes be a bit jarring, can't it?
Definitely.
Know? And I think obviously that's from years and years ago. And, you know, people say about burning your bra. Well, I can't burn mine because it'd burn for 3 days. And we'd need a fire engine and ×3 to put them out. So there would be no way that I could be. And then all the wrinkles would come out my face if I took my bra off. So but I think that feminine, I've probably gone a bit too far with that now. So I'll stop because I've dug myself a hole. But that feminist thing does have a quite a... So the way you've just explained it there, it is sort of like, it's not about sort of like, you know, being, you know, men are evil and we want to sort of like, you know, take over the world. Yeah. But it sort of like puts it in a much better frame. Yeah.
And that's also like, that's not, you know, there's loads of different variations of feminism. I'm sure some people believe that feminism is that, but our understanding of feminism is equality for all. So, you know, everyone should have the right to the same access or the access that's most beneficial for them. So the way that we do that is we work with the UK government and we work with governments across the globe as well to advocate for those policies that say, you know, this is what equality is, this is how it looks. You'll also, like, across the world, which is led by a lot of like the global kind of the biggest economies, like the US, have cut loads of their aid. So the money that they spend internally and externally for things like, you know, women's rights organisations or, you know, organisations that advocate for people's rights and support, their funding has been slashed. We see it here, even here in Liverpool. Yeah. Loads of organisations are closing because they just don't have the funds to sustain the work that they're doing. We're relying more on philanthropy and, you know, kind of having big donors, because we know that the governments and biggest institutions are not putting the money kind of where it needs to be, really, for the frontline crisis work. So that's kind of the backdrop that we're working against. And we're trying to get that funding, obviously more of it, but also spent better as well. So, you know, we do a lot of analysis and research to understand where is that funding best placed to have the biggest impact for women and girls, for boys and young men, you know, for everyone, to make sure that no one's left behind ultimately.
Yeah, because there is at the moment that toxic masculinity, you know, that horrible undercurrent, isn't there, around? Because I'm a mother of a 20-year-old, you know, and so for me, you know, because I always used to say, you know, I'm not spoiling you for the next woman that gets you. So I was a horrible mum. I really was horrible, because I used to make him clean his bedroom. I used to make him, honestly, my friends used to
terrible.
look at me. I'm honestly, I think, how'd you make him do that? You know, like if he left his dishes and that, I'd just put them in his bed and put the cover over it. And he goes, and he goes, oh, all my dishes are in the bed. Well, they don't belong upstairs, do they? Get them in the kitchen.
I like it, stay in hand.
Honestly, horrible mother. But for me, it is about that sort of like that undercurrent of where do men and boys belong, where, and the work that you're doing is vital to that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also, you know, when we think about this toxic masculinity narrative, particularly with adolescents coming out recently, that sparked a whole conversation about this, which is great.
I haven't seen, by the way.
Well, you should watch it. It is really good. It's very dark, but it's good. It sparked great conversations, which is fab. But ultimately, the spaces that these young lads are going to aren't equipped to have the right conversations. You know, there aren't enough people who are trained in what does masculinity mean nowadays. You know, now that gender roles are less abrasive, particularly within the West, like within using the UK as an example, you know, they're not as obvious. Women are going to work, and, you know, women are demanding more and demanding better. So young men are kind of misplacing this understanding of masculinity to think, well, what is masculinity now? Because it's not earning all of the money. It's not looking after women because women can look after themselves. You know, it's that place of confusion that young boys are vulnerable to, that narrative of well, the reason that you're struggling is because of women. It's because of the, you know, the reducing of patriarchy. It's because of feminism. So the rise of misogyny, it goes way, way, way up, because they think that that's the reason for that, when really it's a positive, and it's great that things are being equal.
It's that leveling of that playing field, isn't it?
Exactly.
And, you know, and for years and years, you know, women and girls have felt undervalued and attacked.
Yeah.
So it is that level playing field, but I think social media has a huge influence and an influx in, you know, and especially when people spend an awful lot of time, obviously after COVID, and we've all had to be different in every sort of way because of COVID, which you never ever could have, you know, imagined.
Yeah.
But, you know, and as I say, me as the mum of a young man now, I can't, you know, really call him a boy anymore. But it is that sort of like, you know, I wanted him, so I brought him to MWOTY when he was 14, because I wanted him to see the power in that room. Yeah. And that women aren't just lipstick, and, you know, obviously I love makeup, you know, I always have my red lips on and red nails, but I wanted him to see women above that. Yeah. You know, lipsticks and makeup and whatever.
Definitely.
And, you know, have I succeeded? Well, I won't go. Yeah, I feel as if I have, because there's been certain things that I've watched and witnessed in his life. But I think, oh gosh, yeah, that's made a difference.
Exactly.
So, but I think also sort of to, you know, bring it back to the female element of the work that you're doing is around that sort of like ensuring that you say it's fair for all.
Exactly. And whatever fair looks like.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like maybe some people need a bit more of a leg up than others, or, you know, it's about equity. And I think also, you know, when we think about the narrative around like boys and feminism and the being kind of like a juxtaposition between stuff like that, it's easy to kind of view men and young boys as they have been. They've been angled as perpetrators and violent and this whole narrative, but a lot of them, and we're not discrediting, you know, anyone who is a victim in any way, but a lot of them are victims themselves. You know, young boys are victims to falling into incel culture and, you know, finding community in people who are grooming them and who are bringing them into narratives that are dangerous for themselves and other people. So the more that we can do as communities, whether it's businesses or charities, to bring men into the conversation, I think the better.
Well, I have a saying, which is it can't all be pink and it can't all be blue. It needs to be that bruisey colour in the middle.
Yeah.
Because, you know, for me, you know, if it is too woman-led, it's not a balance, and if it's too male-led, it's not a balance.
Yeah.
And sort of like, you know, that bruisey purpley colour in the middle, yeah, sometimes it probably does cause bruises, but that's for me where the equity comes in, and also I think the creativity.
Exactly.
And the work that you're doing at Restless Development that then helps that to then be global, not just to... It's amazing because you take advice from various... what's going on in different countries.
Yeah, exactly. So within Walking the Talk, we've got different countries working on the same programme. So we've got organisations based in the Netherlands, in Germany, in France, and also in Brussels, in the EU. So all of those different kind of experiences then feed into us saying, well, the Netherlands have agreed to this policy, so, you know, we should do that as well, or they haven't done that quite well. So we all leverage each other's politics, basically, to kind of move towards the policy and the funding that we need. And all of that, again, is then further encompassed by people from the global south, so people who are the global majority. We say, ultimately, you guys need the most investment because the governments call them developing countries, but they're the most exploited countries, really. So we kind of try and get the most funds to them, but again, doing that informed and saying, well, we don't know what your experience is, so we work with those communities and charities and kind of mobilisers to say, what do you need? And we'll help kind of advocate with our governments and our communities to get that to you as much as we can.
Emily, it's absolutely fascinating that, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, you know, I don't, but for such a young person, and that's why when you were on the panel, to have that depth of leadership and that, you know, not just the depth of understanding, but it's also the passion that you have for it. So if you could, obviously the conference was around the 4 pillars, which was network, information, money and self-belief. So which one of those would you pick for the work that you're doing now and where you find yourself now? Which one of those pillars would speak with you?
I think self-belief, definitely, because I think I wouldn't have done anything that I've ever done if there wasn't a little bit of me that thought, you can do that. Just give it a go, and I reckon you can do it. Even if I'd done it scared, I'd done it uneducated, I'd done it unsure, I still proved to me, exactly, I still proved, you know what, you can do it. And, you know, I've been in rooms with people that are from completely different walks of life to me, that probably have never heard a Scouse accent in their life. I walk in and I'm clearly, I look younger than I am as well. So I walk in and think, oh my God, who's this tiny little girl walking in here shouting and telling us what we should do? But I think it's having that belief in yourself to say, even if I don't know it all and I'm unsure, I'm just going to give it a go anyway. And also having that belief in other people as well, to say, ultimately, I believe that people are good and that people will help. You know, because I think when you're an activist or you're doing community work, it's so easy to fall into that hole of everything's bad and evil and I'm tired of fighting. But to carry on that fight and to keep advocating for what you want to advocate for, it's believing in the good of people as well, as much as believing in yourself, I think.
Yeah, but I think it's the balance that you've got to deliver that message.
Yeah.
Because again, for me, it's all in the delivery. And sort of like, you know, you can come across as, you know, harsh or fighting or, you know, wanting to cause conflict and, you know, but it's in the delivery. But also what you do, how you back it up, is the fact that you actually know, you know your stuff.
Yeah.
The first couple of sentences that come out of your mouth, you go, oh, you know, and because everybody judges a book by its cover, and like you just described yourself really well, because you walk in and you go, oh yeah, she's just a young girl.
Yeah.
But, oh my goodness, that day on that panel, you absolutely held your own.
Thanks.
You really did. You were brilliant, because I'm no good at maths, because I'll have to take my shoes and socks off. But the other people that were on that panel were probably added up to about, I don't know, probably do them all a disservice.
I know, yeah,
like,
don't offend
anyone. I better not, because they're absolutely gorgeous people. But there's over 100 years of experience, I'll say, get away with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you just held your own.
Yeah. And I think that's also, you know, when everyone's from different walks of life and different ways of working, you can always learn from someone. Like, I worked with kids as young as 8, and they were probably the most philosophical, educated people ever, that I'm like, oh my God, like, you learn so much no matter anyone's age. I think as long as you're listening and actually listening to what people are saying, there's always something to learn from people.
But that's the thing also, you know, because for me, and you know, I will always come at it from the women's angle, obviously, because I'm immersed in it for the last 30 odd years. That's where I've been. But for me, it's about, you know, being in every sector of society, you know, and women belong everywhere.
Definitely.
And
women are everywhere as well, you know. I think often people kind of assume that women aren't in particular spaces. You know, nowadays people are like, oh, well, women never used to work. Yeah, they did. When the fellas went off to war, they were doing all the jobs, unpaid, unrecognised. So even that, you know, I think what you do with MWOTY, of that recognition and of putting women in a platform where you say, we see what you're doing and we recognise what you're doing, is unmatched, and it's so needed. Yeah.
Thank you. I can't deny, sometimes I do wonder why I do it.
Yeah.
And then sort of like, then we're going through a conference as well and all that kind of stuff. But for me, it's about that platform.
Yeah.
For, like, and even sort of like this podcast, it's about that evolviation, which is probably another made-up word.
It sounds good,
well, I think it is a made-up word, but I can't remember. It just fell out my mouth. But it's that expansion of sort of like what you do is in your day job, but then also to be able to champion and support like what it is you do. And so what have you got coming up next that we could let people know about?
Oh, loads of stuff. So in November, as Restless Development, we're going to be hosting our own UK conference for Walk and the Talk. So that will be a space where government leaders, young people, organisations, companies, anyone really, can come and engage in conversations around policy and funding, but looking at it again through that gender lens and thinking, well, what is going on globally that does impact Liverpool and does impact our communities on that local level. So we haven't got a venue or date yet, but November will be happening. So all of that will be available on Restless Development social media, which is just Restless Development, and on our website as well. And then other than that, we've got so many different things coming up that pop up through our Instagram. So our young people are currently working on their own community events, which is really nice. So there'll be some Liverpool events, which I'm excited about. So yeah, there'll be loads of things popping up. So kind of it's all available on our Instagram, which is great. And then in terms of the actual Walk and the Talk campaign, we're currently recruiting and inviting any young people who are interested in joining our kind of organisation and our movement to advocate for more feminist funding and policies. So that will be going live on our website in the next few weeks as well.
Loads of stuff coming up then.
Loads. It doesn't stop.
So I can't believe that we're nearly at the end, because this has absolutely flown. I think we need at least another 3 hours. I'm sorry, the boys will probably go mad till we haven't got that much tape.
Yeah, everyone in the back's
like,
like,
me age,
no.
we haven't got that much tape. If you can't cut that out. I haven't got that much tape. But, oh dear. One of the things that we've said, because it is called Crispy Ear Podcast. So in your vast experience, what would you go back and give yourself a crispy ear about?
I think it would definitely be to not compare my journey with anyone else's. And we spoke about this earlier on, but when I first kind of started doing what I'm doing, and still to this day, people say, oh, when I was your age, like I couldn't do what you did, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And at that age when I was younger, I thought, oh, like this must be like the thing, this must be why I'm in the room. This must be why I'm invited, just because I'm young, not necessarily because I'm good at what I do or just because I'm young and I can hold a conversation. So that was very much like how I viewed my journey. And now I've just turned 25, so I'm on the cusp of what people might call a young person. And I'm still young, but even as I got older, I thought, well, what am I going to do if like I'm not a young person anymore? You know, like what is the job going to be? What is the kind of reason that people would want to listen to what I've got to say? And I think the more that I've reflected on that is like, it does not matter at all. Like, that's not the reason that, you know, I'm where I am, or, you know, that's not, it's part of the reason, but not the only reason. So I think that whenever I compare my journey to other people's, it's always, you know, oh, as I'm getting older, what will that look like? Or, you know, they're at this stage in their life and I wish that was me. Or, you know, I've always been kind of chasing the next thing because I put a lot of pressure on myself. I'm a perfectionist. So I'm always like, like, you know, I want to be better, or I want to invest in this and, you know, do more. But I think the more that I've kind of paced myself a little bit more, I've realised it's not a race. You don't have to catch up to people. And you also, you know, everyone has their own stages in life that we're going through. So yeah, I think it's definitely don't compare yourself to other people and just breathe a little bit, you know, just be in the moment a little bit more, I think.
Self-belief is a massive part of, I think it's probably one of the most popular things that we've talked about on the podcast. Yeah. But also, for me, I think you embody that, because also from such a dreadful opportunity, well, not an opportunity, but it has turned into an opportunity that happened with Lee.
Yeah.
And if you look at your journey and what that adversity brought, Emily, I could sit here and talk to you for like another 3 hours.
Thank you.
Honestly, but I will get
so
toned
nice.
off. So thank you so much for your time. But listen, just carry on doing what you're doing, because the passion and the fire in your eyes when you're talking about the people that you're helping and making the difference that you make, it just shines from every pore.
Thank you.
It really does. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I've loved every minute.
Same. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. This is Ellie Kerr signing off the Crispy Ear podcast. Thank you for listening. Bye.